The Acolyte may be cancelled now, but that isn't going to stop me from discussing everything wrong with it to bury it the extra 6 feet deep it deserves. Fuck no, this show's not getting away that easily. Episode 4 picks up right where Episode 2 left off on the planet Kofar, where the Wookiee Jedi Kelnaka is once again returning to his homestead. He has the patterns of the witches painted on parts of the walls, which I guess is an interesting detail. We know now that he was possessed by the witches, so perhaps it's something imprinted on his mind from that. Kinda like, I don't know, how Sam touching the cube shard in Transformers 2 caused him to see the Cybertronian hieroglyphs in his mind. But already, we are entering territory where the show needs us to write for it. It would have been interesting to see that explored more, but as far as this scene's concerned, they're just there. Kelnaka's just there. We never find out why those markings are there. What is Kelnaka doing here anyways besides eating grass? Leslie Headland says it's because he banished himself as a Madclaw after the Brendok incident. A Madclaw is a Wookiee that is socially outcasted for using their claws in combat, because in Wookiee culture, being civilized means only using your claws as tools. Let's see what the show says though.
Master Holden, extract Kelnaka from his post on Kofar and intercept May.
And if she doesn't come peacefully?
Not expecting it to come to that.
The order stationed Master Kelnaka on Kofar, but no one has heard from him in over a year. He has been unresponsive to our warning transmissions.
There's no mention of Madclaw anywhere in the show, and instead the show makes it sound as if he was assigned to a post. Vernestra tells another Jedi to extract Kelnaka from his post and intercept May. This implies they know where he is specifically, and knows where May is going to look for him. Wikipedia seems to be under that impression as well. Either Leslie Headland doesn't know what's going on in her own show, or she is just trying to drop little retcons in interviews so she can dig the claws of her shows into the same EU source material that Kathleen Kennedy said didn't exist. Maybe if more time was spent redrafting more compelling story elements into the show before Disney made it instead of after, then maybe it wouldn't have gotten cancelled. Jeez, my breakdown series isn't even done yet and I already feel vindicated. I joke around about how the show is really written by an experimental AI and that Leslie Headland is just the face of the writing, but things like this make me start to think it could be true. The scene wipes over to Coruscant where Osha is watching Jeki finishing up a training session. You can tell the writer did not want to put much thought into this scene because the Jedi teacher is giving the vaguest instruction possible.
Keep each movement tight, yet subtle. Diminish areas of vulnerability. Maximize your defenses without need to strike.
This is like training a boxer and telling them, try not to get hit, without even elaborating on the complexities of blocking and timing. If you're not even going to try to take the interesting opportunity to build upon some of the Jedi training, then why bother with it at all? You might as well just have Osha watching Jeki from slightly farther away, that way she can still see Jeki, but can't quite make out what the Jedi instructor is saying. I understand that Osha is there to reflect on her past in a way, and that she watches Jeki, she is probably remembering when she went through some of the same exercises, but this scene just comes off as lazy. The training session wraps up and Jeki notices Osha waiting for her. Osha is there to thank Jeki. Thank her for what, you ask? I don't blame you for your confusion, because even Jeki feels the same way.
For what?
Well, let's see what Osha says.
For helping me find my sister.
I mean, sure? I guess she had the main plan that you guys went with in order to get information out of Chimere. This is kind of Saul's whole mission though, but okay. We've been over why Yord had the better plan in the last video, but you know what? Fine. Jeki did help, so I'll give you that one.
Prove my innocence, clear my name.
Alright, stop. I can't believe you're gonna make me do this, but I gotta speak up for Yord on this one. Yord is the one that helped prove your innocence and clear your name, not Jeki. When you were caught hovering over Torben's body, it was Yord that explained to everyone how it could not have been you because he was following you. He told everyone that Torben was already dead when you found him. All Jeki did in that situation was tell you to hurry up and start talking.
I may never have known for certain May was alive. And thanks to you, I've seen her with my own eyes.
Oh yeah? Was that before or after she lost visual on May when you guys were on Olega? Jeki didn't do shit in that regard. She was too busy being useless up in the ship. This character interaction is oddly forced together. I wonder why it's being written this way.
Don't tell me you'll miss me.
Oh, okay. I get what's going on here. And I know I said in the last video that I wouldn't use the word woke to describe aspects of the show, and I intend to stick to that. But what I would like to explain here is that when other people say the show is woke, it's probably this awkwardly forced scene they are talking about. This conversation should be happening between Osha and Yord of all people, but instead the show shoehorned it into an interaction with Jackie just so we can get a flirtatious subtext again between two female characters. The result is inorganic and feels unnatural, not just because two female characters are flirting with each other, but because the show forces it to be facilitated for the sake of two female characters flirting with each other.
Next time I'm in Coruscant, though, I'll look you up. And we'll go to a cantina and trade stories about Master Soul.
That's really weird. Cantinas are like bars in Star Wars, right? Osha is 24, and the show portrays Jackie to be in an age group of around 16 or 17 years old. I'm not sure what the drinking age in the Star Wars universe is, but this would be like a 24-year-old trying to invite a high schooler to a bar. Everything about this just feels uncomfortable and gross. If you want to have an ambiguous lesbian romance, that's fine, but I don't get why it has to be between an adult and what seems like a teenager.
She was a child.
Anyways, the scene wipes over to Kofar, where May and Chimera are about to make their landing and search for Kelnaka. May is raring to go, but Chimera tells her,
I wouldn't just take off if I were you. Kofar is massively uncharted. I know bounty hunters won't set foot in these forests.
Other people suspected much earlier on, but right about here is when I figured Chimera was Smiler Ren. Bounty hunters are pretty capable. Yet we're supposed to believe that they can't hang in these forests, but somehow the guy that appears to be clumsy can? At this point, it's pretty obvious that he is hiding his power level. May asks,
You went in there and risked your life for my master?
and
No.
Chimera says,
No, I risked my life to help you.
which is also in line with what May's master wants for her, since presumably his training is meant to make her stronger in service of the power of two. Pretty obvious that Chimera is May's master, but to be fair, May being a moron is pretty consistent with her character so far. So nope, no questions or second guesses from May. Her and Chimera set off on their trek through the jungle of Kofar. Back on Coruscant, Saul is meeting with the Discount Jedi Council, and for some reason, Ki-Adi-Mundi is there? Pretty much everything wrong with this and how it breaks canon has already been said, so I won't get into it too much, and whether you agree with that or not. Having him here absolutely creates more problems and needless complexities that could have been easily avoided, which makes it even more baffling that Dave Filoni would sign off on this. I know that they originally wanted to have Yoda in this scene but couldn't prepare in time, and so they went with Ki-Adi-Mundi instead. But that just goes to show that even if you throw $180 million at someone, they still can't buy prudent planning. It also shows the desperation of a cheap cameo that connects us to members of the High Council as we remember them in the prequels. However, the whole point of this scene is to show us the importance of having this investigation kept away from the awareness of the High Council, according to Vernestra.
We must alert the High Council.
The High Council would be obliged to inform the Senate. A scandal like this would inspire fear and mistrust. We should handle this ourselves.
If that's the case, then why the fuck do they want Yoda of all people in this scene as their first choice? Once again, the things said by people working on this show are incongruent with what is actually being said in the show. They don't care about paying attention to their work and having it make sense. All they seem to care about is shoving characters you remember in front of you. For no reason! The Jedi discuss the nature of May's identity and training, and Vernestra begins to debrief them on the situation by busting Saul's balls in front of everybody. She says May eluded Saul and killed 2 Jedi Masters, which there's no possible way for anyone to understand unless Vernestra shows holograms of the dead Jedi turning red.
Red? That's red.
Ki-Adi-Mundi says they must alert the High Council. Vernestra says the High Council would want to inform the Senate, and it would cause a scandal that would inspire fear and mistrust, and they must handle the situation internally. I'm sure that won't get contradicted later. Also, what do you mean by inspire fear and mistrust, Vernestra? Fear and mistrust aren't really inspiring or the results of inspiration. Inspire usually has a positive connotation to it. I think the word you're looking for there is instill. The meeting adjourns and Saul catches up to Vernestra in the hall. She throws a small hissy fit at Saul for not telling her May's death wasn't actually confirmed 16 years ago. I mean, sure, she's right that Saul should have considered this and probably told her, but her tone makes her sound uncharacteristically angry for a Jedi Master. Saul pleads with Vernestra to let him bring in May. And I kinda just feel like I'm rewatching the scene from episode 1 where he did the same thing to get Osha. Saul says he wants to be the one to go after May because he thinks one of the other Jedi might neutralize her, and they would lose out on further leads to May's master. Which I guess makes sense, but it's just weird that he brings an entire team of Jedi with him then. Because what if the group splits up or gets separated somehow, and what if one of the other Jedi is forced to confront and neutralize May? This should have been a smaller group because the more people Saul brings with him, the more it increases the chances of that happening. But the plot needs all these extra bodies here for what's to come later on. Also, why didn't the Jedi who Vernestra originally delegated the mission to come along? There could have been an interesting leadership dynamic in the group. There could have been an interaction between her and Saul and how they disagree on the way the situation should be handled. But then again, this show isn't written for people who want interesting dialogue or character interactions. This show is written for people that want to watch things go from light to dark and change colors.
That's red.
Saul says that May won't surrender without getting something in return. Vernestra asks him if they have something she wants, and Saul nods to confirm. They're talking about Osha here, of course, but if they think May's mission is to simply find and kill the 4 Jedi, then why would they think that Osha will be what May wants and needs to go along? It's only written this way because Osha is the main character. What would make more sense is if Saul meant that he is what May wants. And that is all the more reason why he should go and not the other Jedi. All it takes to bring in May is Saul confronting her and making a deal with her that if she goes along with him peacefully and cooperates to find May's master, that he will tell the Jedi Council everything about the Brendok incident, along with working to get her a reduced sentence or better incarceration conditions. And if Vernestra is really that upset about not knowing the full story from 16 years ago, then why doesn't she just go along with Saul now so she can get to the bottom of things herself? The plot is more convoluted than it needs to be, so it can include and exclude certain characters for certain events, and ultimately service the story that the writer wants to be told rather than what would make more sense and pragmatically advance the plot. Back on Kofar, Kymir begins to ask May how she plans to kill without a weapon. He asks if May would be allowed to disarm a Jedi and use their own lightsaber against them, which could be his way of trying to put the idea into her head. May has already been trying that though. Every time this comes up in conversation, it's annoying as fuck because for this entire series, it's never explained or elaborated on why killing a Jedi without a weapon even matters. The characters just keep saying this over and over again. Does killing a Jedi without a weapon or with their own saber unlock the ability to bleed a kyber crystal later on? And if being able to bleed a kyber crystal is the more important focus of the training, then why doesn't Kymir / Smilo Ren just say that instead of vaguely saying that May needs to kill without a weapon? This is why I kinda think Smilo is just a Sith wannabe. He's clearly trying to emulate some sort of dark side training, but I don't think that even he fully knows what he's talking about. It almost sounds as if Kymir is about to explain why her master wants her to do this, but May cuts him off. I'm assuming the whole killing a Jedi without a weapon thing is a part of some High Republic lore I haven't read, because the fact that they reference it this much without explaining why it needs to be done this way is just insanely incompetent writing. One could argue that it wasn't explained more so the reveal of the kyber crystal being bled wouldn't be spoiled later on, but that doesn't justify it. That just means the audience was left in the dark about a fundamental aspect of the show's plot in order for the show to dangle a rock changing colors in front of them.
Red. That's red.
But we'll talk more about that when we get to the final episode. May and Kymir reach the forest perimeter and May says,
Can't believe my sister's Jedi scum.
"Oh, well, did you have this thought before or after you decided her being alive changes everything? Or are you still mulling that one over?" On Coruscant, Osha is getting ready to leave the Jedi Temple, but luckily Saul catches up to her just in time. He tells her he still needs her help on this mission. She asks if he wants her to rejoin the Jedi Order, and Saul says,
Well, not officially.
Oh.
Osha realizes Saul is using her to get to May, but Saul says it's in May's better interest that they should go, so they can make sure May doesn't get hurt. He tells Osha that May's eyes softened when she learned that Osha was still alive and that he believes there is still good in her. Osha tells Saul that May is a murderer,
Based.
and Saul says,
But she's still your family.
I guess technically true, but is this really supposed to be wholesome? Osha finally agrees to go along with Saul on the mission, but tells him she's not wearing a civilian robe. Oh, is that the civilian robe? Oh, I get it. She said she wouldn't wear the civilian robe, and now I think she's sitting in the civilian robe now?
Oh gosh, that's funny.
On the ship, Yord starts to brief the crew on the mission, and to reiterate, he says,
The Order stationed Master Kalnaka on Kofar, but no one has heard from him in over a year. He has been unresponsive to our warning transmissions.
So if Kalnaka banished himself like Leslie Headland claims he did, then why did he wait 15 years to do it? If his feelings of guilt were really that bad, then why didn't he banish himself immediately after the Brendok incident all those years ago, when his guilt would have been more fresh in his mind? Did he feel increasingly more guilty as time went on? Did he hear about Torben taking the Barash vow, and does he feel responsible and banished himself for that? It doesn't make sense that Kelnaka would go about doing business as usual for 15 years after the Brendock incident and then decide he was consumed by guilt of being a Mad Claw. Leslie Headland doesn't know what the fuck she's talking about. While Yord gives the briefing, we get introduced to a pointless character that probably had too much money spent on them to animate named Basil, or as I like to call him, Not Rocket Raccoon. You see, this is the Jedi Order's tracker because for some reason not a single Jedi in the entire Order can track or pinpoint people through the Force, even though we see that Saul and Vernestra can. It would have literally been cheaper and made more sense to not have this autistic space otter at all, but just have the Jedi be able to reach out through the Force and pick up on the trail. Did they really think this rat was going to be popular?
Do you understand what the Basil is saying?
His name is Basil.
Oh, I guess they did. Then it's pretty obvious that this character's only purpose is to serve as a marketing investment. Sure, it was probably expensive to animate, but I bet Disney thought the show would be more successful and Not Rocket would make the money back by selling plushies of himself. Following the cancellation of this terrible show, Disney Plus removed all of their Acolyte merch from their store, so I guess we know how that turned out. I guess the cutesy comedy scene they tried to force into this serious mission didn't go over so well with what little audience this show had. Nobody really knows exactly what this exchange is, but it seems like Not Rocket asking Osha if her phone has any games, which I guess Pip is offended by and decides to shoot water or some sort of liquid at him. Osha apologizes to Not Rocket and then moves over to Jackie to ask,
What's that? That's Basil. Is he or they with us?
well, that hits the ear all sorts of wrong, but we all know why the show is forcing they in there.
Fucking pronouns! Fucking gender ambiguity!
Yord asks Osha if she has any questions, and after she mocks him in another out-of-place comedy beat, the team departs for the surface of planet Kofar. Once on the surface, Jackie uses her Google Translate to ask one of the locals some questions. While this happens, the rest of the team is just standing around and staring off into the forest for a minute. Yord notices Osha still has the stun blaster from Olega and says that she needs to hand it over. I don't get why Yord is suddenly suspicious of Osha all over again. He's the one that personally helped prove Osha's innocence on Olega. Also, doesn't he know that Osha isn't there as a prime suspect anymore? He's the one that briefed the team. He should know that she is cleared at this point and here to help Saul. Jackie returns to the group and says one of the locals told her Kelnaka ventured off into the forest and never came back. Saul stares off into the forest for a moment and says,
Kelnaka is in there.
Clearly, he can sense Kelnaka's presence, so this just highlights how pointless Basil being here is again. This is well before May betrays Chimere and they separate, so that means Chimere hasn't changed into Smilo Ren to go kill Kelnaka yet. Also, when May finds Kelnaka's body later on, we can see that the lightsaber wound is still smoldering, implying that he wasn't killed until moments before she arrived. Kelnaka is alive at this moment, and they still have hours left to go look for him. That's plenty of time for a group of 8 Jedi to reach out through the Force in all directions in order to pick up on Kelnaka's trail. But instead, they have Basil sniff Kelnaka's jockstrap. Where did Yord even get this cloth that has Kelnaka's scent? Seems like it would have more of Yord's scent on it now, seeing as how he practically pulled it out of his ass. Our team sets off on their venture into the Forest of Kofar. Osha catches up to Yord and asks him if he can understand what Basil is saying. Yord says he can because instead of wanting to learn the Wookiee language Shriwook like most Padawans, he wanted to learn a language more nuanced. Nuance, huh? Osha tells Yord she needs to ask him a favor. She tells Yord that Saul thinks May should be saved, implying that she believes in the contrast that May is too far gone to be saved. Yord tells Osha that Saul is a wise Jedi and that he must have a reason to think that May will listen to what Osha has to say. Which is funny considering Saul wouldn't let Osha confront May on Olega. But I am assuming this is written intentionally in order to portray the Jedi as contradictory or hypocritical because Osha addresses it later on. Osha pleads with Yord and tells him that if May can't be reasoned with, he needs to be the one to stop May since Osha won't be able to. Which I assume means kill May if necessary. Because Saul already wants to stop May and bring her in. Just because Saul thinks May can be saved and reasoned with doesn't mean he plans on letting her go. So Osha must think that Saul's approach is flawed enough to either leave him and everyone there vulnerable or allow for May to escape and others in her path to be harmed and killed. So let me get this straight. In the time it took to get from Coruscant to Kofar, Osha went from acknowledging her sister as a murderer that needs to be brought to justice for her crimes, to being utterly disinterested in justice, redemption, or reasoning and instead wants Yor to simply stop her, as in kill her if necessary? Well, don't threaten me with a good time, but where is this even coming from? The whole point of her and Saul even being here is to prevent exactly that from happening. Terms that she agreed to. Is this supposed to be taken as the conflict in the episode? The only conflict here is how much it doesn't make sense. Then again, this is the episode that everyone says is a filler episode, but it feels somehow less than that.
Ew! What's this? There's nothing here, you see. That's very bad.
May and Chimere enter the dense forest of Kofar while our team of main characters and nameless lightsaber fodder are doing the same. Basil, being the reliable and nuanced guy that he is, leads the team right into a nest of large and dangerous insect creatures called Umbra Moths and screeches to notify the team. Once again, the show has to temporarily pretend like Jedi being able to sense life doesn't exist in order to facilitate the plot. These creatures may be hibernating or something like that, but they're not dead. The only one that was somehow able to sense life within the creatures was Osha. The only reason for this is to show that she can randomly start sensing things through the Force again, which we'll talk about in a bit, but at least one of the Jedi here should have been able to sense a dense cluster of life forms in their path. Yorn tells the group that Basil says something is wrong in this area, like something is rotten. The only thing I see rotting here is the show's writing and this episode's pacing. But what does Basil even mean by that? Is the dark side strong in this area? Does the death in the Force feed the dark side here and obscures the life force in this area? Do the Umbra Moths have a symbiotic relationship with that, and do they choose to hibernate here for that kind of protection? Gee, it would be nice if this show would let the Jedi actually be Jedi and reach out with the fucking Force for clues. Saul tells the group to keep up the pace and keep down the volume. Seems easy enough. Maybe not for the volume challenge gerbil, but sounds like everyone else should be able to do that without doing anything stupid.
Son of a bitch!
Okay then, never mind. I guess we're going with Osha being retarded instead. A swarm of large insects in what seems like the Australia of the Star Wars universe? I find it pretty hard to believe that anyone would want to touch these things, hibernating or not. The Umbra Moth that Osha touches awakens and Osha yells for Saul's help. It's a good thing Osha yelling for Saul didn't wake the rest of them up because this group would be fucked. If Osha yelling doesn't do anything to wake up the other Umbra Moths, then what's the point of Saul telling the rest of the group to be quiet? The Umbra Moth flies into the air and prepares to attack Osha, but Saul ignites his lightsaber and the Umbra Moth instead flies directly towards Saul. He slices the Umbra Moth in half and then Jackie looks directly into the camera and says,
Straight for the saber.
It's attracted to light.
Okay, not really, but it's pretty obvious she says that for a reason. The only reason this happens is so the show can set up a false payoff later in episode 5. As the group continues through the forest, Jackie notices something is bothering Osha, so she asks her what's wrong. Osha says that she was able to sense the creature, but she disturbed it, and now it's dead. Was she able to sense it before or after she touched it? And if she could either way, then why didn't she warn the rest of the group sooner? If she was able to sense it then why was she having trouble finding it until after she was able to hear where it was? But I guess the show expects us to believe that Osha can feel the Force again just because she touched a bug's ass. Jackie says,
It's always an honor to get to witness anything or anyone transform into the Force.
Really? Always? Anyone? Anything? Is that why Saul doesn't do anything to prevent her or Yord from getting killed in a few hours? Because all of the honor? What the fuck is she even talking about? Jackie goes on to say,
Although you've had more experience with death than I have.
Is reminding Osha of that supposed to make her feel better? Osha says she can never accept death and what she lost, as a true Jedi should, and how she couldn't master her negative emotions brought up by her past. Jackie says,
We're not defined by what we lose. We're defined by what we survive.
Which, to be fair, is a line with some perspective that I kinda like.
You've survived a lot.
Oh, never mind, you ruined it. Elsewhere in the forest, May and Chimere are making their way through when May wants to suddenly take a rest. At first, Chimere pleads with her to continue, but then he allows May to take her moment to catch her breath. May says it's impossible, and Chimere says it's not impossible, and she knows that. But since we are talking about a Wookiee Jedi Master, then as much as I hate to agree with May, she's kinda right. Kelnaka obviously has her beat on physical strength, but he probably has her beat in strength in the Force as well. How does Chimere expect this to go? Does he really expect May to be able to kill Kelnaka after running nonstop through the forest? Or was his plan to reveal his identity to her as Smilo Ren so they can kill him together and he can prove some sort of point through that? But as we'll see later, even he used his lightsaber to kill Kelnaka. After a few seconds, May says,
It's not a test. He calls it the final lesson. He says, your final lesson is when you teach yourself.
yeah, that's nice, May. But this isn't the final lesson, though. Because even if you somehow succeed in killing Kelnaka here, you would still have Saul left to kill. So wouldn't you be learning your final lesson then? I thought Leslie Headland was interested in exploring and writing about the Sith.
What I was interested in examining were the Sith.
So why the fuck did she write this dark side training in the show to be so nonsensical? Anyway, Chimera and May have a back and forth on whether or not the training is impossible. May says if she fails, her master will kill her and tells Chimera that he doesn't even care. He tells her he does care and pauses for a moment, seemingly sympathizing for her. Chimera tells her he's going to find her more water and that May is right, she needs to rest. He says,
"You're losing your nerve, and we can't have that, can we?"
I guess it's kind of interesting to wonder if this is performative as a part of Chimera's friend persona to May, or if the part of him that is actually her master really sympathizes for her. It would have been intriguing to see how Chimera navigates the conversation and turns it into a training moment for May without letting her onto the fact that he is her master. But that would require whoever's writing this to think too hard. So Chimera goes off to find water for May, and after he leaves, May seems to be getting an idea. Not too far away, the Jedi team makes their way deeper into the forest when suddenly...
I don't see him.
What?
Basil.
Really?
Great! He's vanished again.
Again? How many times has this happened so far?
I swear we need a tracker just to track our tracker.
Oh gosh, that's funny.
Or you can use the fucking Force for fuck's sake. Is this not fucking Star Wars? Are you not fucking Jedi?
I'm fine. I'm perfectly fucking fine.
The group catches up to Saul to let him know they've lost Basil when they hear May scream, and it sounds pretty close to them. Chimera can also hear May scream and comes rushing back to where he left May to rest. Chimera gets caught and hung upside down in a trap that at first I thought was set by Kelnaka. But May is the one that set it? What the hell is even going on here?
You know, after running through that forest for an extremely long time, I realized something. I don't need to do this anymore.
What the fuck, dude? Alright, now let me get this straight. May has been on board with killing Jedi either with or without a weapon, says she wants to achieve it more than anything.
I want this more than anything.
But a jog through the forest is all it takes for her to abandon her mission, abandon her revenge, abandon her master and his training. This is insanely pathetic, but hey, I guess it means May is definitely not a Mary Sue.
You were wrong. Osha being alive changes everything.
You sure about that, May? Then why the fuck didn't it change everything when you saw her back on Olega? Why didn't it change everything when you found out Chimera sold you out to the Jedi? You say it changes everything, but it seems like you had to mull it over for a while. Didn't you just call her Jedi scum a couple of hours ago? Osha being alive doesn't change everything. The fact that you probably can't win against Kelnaka doesn't even change everything. What changed everything is you crying about having to go on a hike beforehand. That's it. That's what brought out the sense of impossibility for you. Everything about this feels like a cheap expectation subversion bullshit page taken out of Rian Johnson's book. This kind of 180 isn't even close to being earned, and the 2-minute interaction between these two characters earlier isn't even close to justifying it. The idea that a writer would think it does should be an insult to the audience.
What I'm going to do is surrender myself to Kelnaka, and then turn myself into the Jedi.
I mean, yeah, I guess she should probably just do that if she really thinks facing the consequences of her actions will reunite her with Osha and provide her the protection she needs from her master. As we'll see later though, May doesn't even try to surrender to the Jedi. Sure, Kelnaka is dead by the time she finds him, but she doesn't even try to surrender to Saul and the other Jedi. She doesn't try to tell Jecki to chill the fuck out so she can surrender to her and be detained. And when May finally talks to Osha later on in episode 5, she pleads with Osha to choose her and not the Jedi. Is May lying to Chimera just so she could make up a reason to betray him? She doesn't need to lie to him about turning herself into the Jedi though, she could literally just leave him hanging and fuck off. Episodes 4 and 5 are written by different people, and it seems like those people didn't even talk to each other or Leslie Headland. Out of all the scenes in the entire show, this is probably the one that sticks out the most and makes sense the least, along with Smilo Ren's stupid speech at the end of episode 1. We'll see it is a huge anomaly in the plot of the show going forward. The team of Jedi and Osha somehow haven't gotten a clue which direction to look for May in, even though the show made it sound like her scream was close.
We've lost Basil.
Chimera was screaming for help too after he got caught in the trap, so they didn't hear him and pick up on the direction that was coming from either? These aren't Jedi. These are just people in the forest at this point. Saul stares at what I assume is the tree that Chimera was tied up to. It's hard to tell because it looks like a CGI green screen tangled mess, but I can kind of make out a rope strung throughout the foliage. Lee Jung-jae is a pretty good actor though, and the way he emotes makes you wonder what is going through his mind every time, especially in this scene. Saul seems very bothered by something and sounds drained and winded. The way I interpreted it was Saul feeling a disturbance in the Force. And not only that, but this could also be the first time Saul has been gripped by the presence of the dark side.
It's nothing.
Or this could be the moment that Smilo Ren killed Kilnaka not too far from here and Saul is feeling that through the Force. I really wish the show allowed Saul to describe what he is feeling and thinking a little more. Not only because it sounds like it could have been interesting, but also because I think Lee Jung-jae would have given an amazing delivery of that potential dialogue. Maybe Saul didn't want to alarm the group, but if he does feel the presence of a threat or danger out there, then it would be better to let the group know so they could be alert and on guard. Osha says to Saul that he wouldn't let her confront May on Olega. Saul says she wasn't ready, to which Osha replies,
"But I'm ready now."
And yeah, that's actually a good point. Finally, a question from a character that doesn't require me begging them to generate a brain cell in order to ask. Saul says this time is different. Osha says she feels different because she can sense things again, in a way that gives her courage to face May. So then, I guess Osha doesn't need Yor to face May and stop her like she asked him to do just a couple of hours ago?
But if it comes to it, and she doesn't listen to me, you need to stop her. I won't be able to do it.
Osha.
Please. I can't hesitate a second time. I feel different. I sense things again, in a way that gives me the courage to face her.
So just like with May, the show is trying to force an entire character arc moment to happen for Osha in the brief time that she has been hiking through the forest. That's where we're at, folks. Saul tells Osha that she's not going to face May, but instead will be facing her past along Saul. Saul promises he'll explain everything this means after they return safely to the ship with May. It's pretty funny in this scene how the other Jedi are just standing around awkwardly looking around everywhere while Saul and Osha have their interaction. As the sun is setting, May is closing in on Kelnaka's homestead. She trips and falls on her face, but when she looks up, Basil is right in front of her. Basil gets a whiff of May's scent and he screeches to alert the group of Jedi. I thought Basil's entire purpose was to find Kelnaka, but I guess they told Basil about May too? Not sure when that would have happened though, since the nuanced Basil wasn't listening during the briefing and was too busy messing with Pip. The Jedi all move into the direction they hear Basil calling from, but for some reason they weren't able to do this when May was screaming for help or when Chimera was screaming for help. May rushes into Kelnaka's home and calls his name. She can see Kelnaka sitting in a chair and approaches him, but as she gets closer, she can see it's his dead body in the chair. With a lightsaber slash across his torso, his flesh and his fur still smoldering from the heat of the blade. This means Smilo Ren didn't kill Kelnaka until after he escaped May's trap and moments before she arrived here. Now it's already pretty lame that they killed Kelnaka off screen like this, but what makes it even more lame is the fact that Smilo Ren killed him with his weapon and made his own training for May even more pointless.
If you attack a Jedi with a weapon, you will fail. Steel or laser are no threat to them. An Acolyte kills without a weapon.
Knowing that only her master could have done this, May says,
"He's here."
And the sun sets, shrouding the forest in darkness. Get it? Look, I know these are extremely complex and advanced themes we are dealing with here, but I'm just making sure everyone's media literacy is high enough to understand what's going on here, so we're all on the same page before we move on. It's hilarious to see people that shill for this show pretend like this is nuanced and not junior high level fiction writing.
Calling it now. Next week's episode will be Night, #The Acolyte.
I thought the same thing by the end of the episode. At first I was like, day? What kind of title is that? Now I understand.
That sun setting at the end and the light going away. Yeah.
Can we talk about how soul means sun? Day should be an interesting episode for him.
For fuck's sake.
The Jedi then reach Kelnaka's homestead. Jackie calls out Kelnaka's name, but instead of continuing and going inside to check and see if Kelnaka is there, the group of Jedi and Osha just randomly stop and call for anyone that may be inside to come out. It would make sense if the show portrayed them as being able to sense their surroundings, but in order for the show to work, it's made its Jedi characters blind to the Force this entire time. It's shown them not even being able to keep track of a guy that's on their side while standing around looking like lost idiots.
swear we need a tracker just to track our tracker.
Even if you scream from nearby, they won't be able to find you. You expect me to believe now, under this show's circumstances, they can suddenly sense Kelnaka is dead in there and that May is still inside? Fuck off. May said she was going to turn herself into the Jedi in hopes of reuniting with Osha. She can see that Osha is with them, so why doesn't she say something? Anything. She can say, we're all in danger, or, I'll surrender, but we need to get out of here. Why doesn't she try to yell at Osha to watch out? I guess one can argue that she's too afraid to say anything and might think it's too late, but it seems she takes a moment to think about something, so she's hardly paralyzed by fear. Osha being alive changes everything, and she wants to turn herself into the Jedi, but also she just wants to see how this plays out, I guess.
Man, this is some bullshit!
Saul turns around and we can see Smilo Poppins floating down towards Osha.
Take a look!
The Jedi tell him to identify himself and stand down, but he ignores them and continues to approach Osha until he is face to face with her. Smilo Ren ignites his red lightsaber, which causes Saul and the other Jedi to ignite their lightsabers, and Saul yells at Osha to run. Smilo uses the Force to yeet Osha off screen, and all the Jedi charge at Smilo together. But before they can reach him, Smilo does a massive Force push that sends a wave, causing all the Jedi to fly back in a cloud of dust, and the scene fades to credits. The end to an episode with such shockingly terrible writing that it takes away from the show more than it contributes. It can't even qualify as filler because it doesn't fill anything. The only thing this episode adds is a pointless CGI rodent marketing scheme that only highlights the mismanaged financial resources of this show, at the cost of potentially more compelling scenes and plot elements, a cost that the audience pays with their expectations and investment. It's no wonder viewership started to drop after this episode. Watching this episode flip its main character's motivations upside down on their head is enough to make me feel like Chimere felt when he was hanging upside down and like the blood is rushing to my head. This show's equilibrium is gone, and following it is enough to induce vertigo. Osha wakes up in the beginning of episode 5, right where episode 4 leaves off. After being yeeted by Smilo Ren, she tries to look around on the ground nearby for her pip droid. After she finds it, she makes her way back over to where all the Jedi were knocked down by Smilo's Force Wave, but she trips and falls to the forest floor. As she looks to her right, she sees the dead body of one of the Jedi, his face staring lifelessly back at her. A little morbid detail I was surprised by, but a welcome one. But I think it's kind of funny to think this Jedi died by falling on either his own or someone else's lightsaber. I mean, the Jedi were grouped together pretty close still when Smilo pushed them back, so somebody had to have gotten a swipe in that mess. Osha stares out towards Kelnaka's homestead and stands around for a moment until she starts to hear lightsabers clashing in the forest behind her. You know, right now at this moment, May is still watching and able to see that Osha is out there. Smilo Ren is busy fighting a handful of Jedi still, and May has plenty of time to call for Osha to come out so they can try to escape together. After all, didn't she tell Chimere?
My loyalty is to Osha, not your master.
Is May's idea of loyalty watching from afar, saying nothing and waiting to see how this plays out? While each second that passes puts Osha in more and more danger, Osha turns and can see through the trees that Smilo Ren is fighting some of the other Jedi along with Yord not too far away from her. Jeki and Saul are out of the picture until the plot needs to introduce them back in. It doesn't show them being knocked out or anything like that. They're just off screen somewhere, but don't think about that, just look at the colors, right? I mean, Smilo's holding his own 5-on-1. Oop, make that 4-on-1. But if Saul and Jeki were there too, Smilo would probably be defeated. Two of the Jedi attack Smilo and he uses his Cortosis armband and helmet to deactivate the lightsabers. At first, I and a lot of other people didn't really know what was happening at this moment. At first, I thought Smilo hit and damaged the actual hilts of the lightsaber somehow. Yord steps in and engages Smilo, momentarily saving the others until their lightsabers are able to activate again. Yord takes a slash to the leg, and even though Smilo can follow up with a kill strike, the camera cuts away. Smilo goes back to fighting the other nameless Jedi and finishes them off by impaling one with his lightsaber and force pulling the other towards his lightsaber to impale him too. The camera pans over partly behind a tree as Smilo Ren withdraws his lightsaber from the torso of the Jedi and beheads them, with the tree covering the last moment, which to be honest I thought was kind of a cool shot. But of course it comes with a huge problem. If Force users like Saul and Smilo can just freeze and or grab people with the Force, and if this show is trying to portray the Jedi as a police force, then why aren't the Jedi using the Force together to subdue Smilo Ren right now? Having them do this should be Jedi group fighting training day 1 stuff, but I guess Yord and all of these glup shittos aren't strong enough in the Force or smart enough to try that. So instead, Smilo Ren just cleans house on all of the nameless Jedi and leaves Yord temporarily incapacitated.
Double kill. Triple kill.
Smilo makes his way over to Yord, presumably to finish him off, but Osha shoots Smilo with the stun blaster, temporarily saving Yord's life. The stun blast doesn't seem to phase Smilo, but I'm actually okay with this in a way, and there's a couple reasons why. Most Force users are able to generate a layer of Force energy around their body as a shield during combat and other dangerous situations. This is why Obi-Wan is able to tank some of the explosive damage from Jango's ship in Attack of the Clones. And in Smilo Ren's case, the dark side could be augmenting his adrenaline and resistance to pain and stuns, allowing him to kill more. But just like the function of cortosis, only people who have a substantial amount beyond the movies and shows would understand this. So to most people, the fact that Smilo is unfazed by this is unexpected enough to cause some confusion. Yord yells at Osha to run away, and instead of finishing off Yord, Smilo turns and follows Osha. That's twice now that Smilo could have ended Yord, but don't worry, we'll see him die soon enough. Osha takes off through the forest. May, who has just been standing in Kelnaka's homestead this whole time, looks around for something she'll find useful to her, I guess. She sees Kelnaka's lightsaber and grabs it so she can bring it with her as she leaves Kelnaka's homestead. I guess she just wanted to have some sort of weapon with her, but what is her plan here? Does she really think she can take on her master in lightsaber combat if he attacks her? But hey, at least she picked up the lightsaber this time instead of leaving it on the ground like she did with Indara. We cut back to Osha running through the forest, but she stops in order to look around for the next direction to run in. Just keep fucking going, don't stop. There is a superpowered murderer behind you. For some reason, there's no animals in this entire forest except for those bugs. And as long as you keep your light off and keep running, it's better than stopping here and now. Osha starts to hear noises rustling in the forest brush, and so she takes off running again. Smilo pops out to ignite his lightsaber and then uses the Force to send it flying through the air at Osha. Osha turns around, and just before the lightsaber reaches her, Saul jumps in its path to block it, sending it boomeranging back to Smilo Ren. Where the fuck has Saul been this whole time? How did he go from being Force pushed with the group to being so far away from everyone else when Smilo Ren was cleaning house on the Jedi? Osha took off running twice to get here. Did Saul somehow run all the way over here after getting up from Smilo's Force push? He definitely should have been there when all the Jedi were fighting Smilo earlier. It's just that the plot wanted to keep Saul off to the side until now. As Smilo's red lightsaber boomerangs back towards him, the blade slices through 3 trees next to him. The tops of the trees fall over in an odd way that I assume Smilo must be doing with the Force to prevent them from falling on him or blocking his path to Saul and Osha, because judging by the angles of the cuts in the trees, they're falling the opposite way they should be. Yord catches up to Osha coming from behind them? Yord should be coming from the same direction that Osha and Smilo came from. How did he get all the way over here behind Osha and Saul when we just saw him incapacitated with a slice to the leg? Even if Yord found a way to go around and flank them, he probably shouldn't have been able to do it this quickly. Saul tells Yord,
"Civilian to the ship!"
and Force pushes Osha towards Yord. Yord catches Osha and repeats the order,
"Civilian to the ship!"
and he takes her away from Saul and Smilo. While running through the forest, Yord spots Basil. And where the fuck has he been this whole time? I was hoping Smilo Ren either broke every bone in his body with his massive force push or turned him into a Basil kebab, but I guess he just kinda disappeared after he raided when he ran into May. Lucky for Yord, he's able to spot Basil in the forest at nighttime easily, even though he couldn't keep track of him in the daylight. It's also lucky for Basil that this uncharted forest planet somehow doesn't have a single animal that could easily eat him, like a space bear or some sort of space wildcat. It's so funny to me that Chimere said,
I wouldn't just take off if I were you. Kofar is massively uncharted. I know bounty hunters won't set foot in these forests.
why not? There's nothing here except for plants and umbra moths, and if you avoid their nesting area along with having bright lights on you, then you should be fine. I mean, a couple of scavengers wandered in here looking for shit to pawn, and they were doing alright until Kelnaka found them. Osha stops Yord by telling him,
We have to go back!
and then notices that he's injured. Yord reassures Osha that he's fine and says Saul gave him an order. He then tells Osha,
I don't want to have to subdue you, but I will.
not too sure how he would do that unless it's a mind trick just to make her listen to him and go to the ship. If he handcuffs her, it'll slow them both down. And if he stuns her or knocks her unconscious, how is he going to carry her with an injured leg while keeping up with Basil? He probably already lost Basil again by now. Yord says, "Come on," and Osha complies for the moment as they continue through the forest. We cut back to Saul and Smilo facing off. And I guess they've just been standing here staring at each other, waiting for Osha and Yord's scene to be over so they can start their scene. Saul says,
Who are you?
And Smilo says,
You don't remember me.
To which Saul says,
I sense something familiar.
Since this show is cancelled now, I'm sure the low number of fans of it are crying about how now they won't learn the connection between these two characters. But judging by how this show is written, it's probably just as simple as Saul met Smilo and probably had a few interactions with him when he was a Padawan to Vernestra. I can almost promise you it wouldn't be bothered with to be more interesting than that. Unless there's some sort of backstory between Saul and Smilo that I'm not aware of since I haven't read the High Republic stuff.
Page-turners, they were not.
After some saber clashing, Saul tells Smilo,
You carry a Jedi weapon, but you are no Jedi.
Yeah, clearly not, Saul. Seeing as how you just murdered all of your Jedi associates. Are you even aware of what happened to them? I mean, you were all the way the fuck off over here, a good running distance away from the initial fight scene for some reason. Why aren't you asking Smilo what happened to the others? Aren't you wondering why they aren't coming to help you right now? The scene cuts back to May emerging from Kelnaka's homestead with his lightsaber in hand. She slowly walks forward as she makes sure the coast is clear. Then she picks up her pace to a sprint, but she is stopped from a flying double kick from Jackie coming from off screen. Now I'm assuming Jackie must have been hiding behind this tree right here, I guess. Because the front of Kelnaka's home is a wide open patch of forest, with not much to prevent May from seeing Jackie out there. Once May and Jackie both fall to the ground, they have a moment to lock eyes with each other. Now if what May said in episode 4 was true...
What I'm going to do is surrender myself to Kelnaka, and then turn myself into the Jedi.
This would be the moment for May to say something to Jackie like, wait, you don't understand, or wait, let me explain, or I surrender, but I need your help. I mean, anything besides nothing during this entire fight sequence. This is just another discrepancy that makes me think that the writers didn't communicate with each other at all much when making their narrative choices. So instead of May saying anything, her and Jackie get back up and start their fight sequence. And as much as I hate how this is happening right now, I do like the way the hand-to-hand combat starts out in their fight. It starts off very raw and scrappy in a way most fights naturally would. Jackie force pushes May through the wall of Kelnaka's home, and while May is on the ground, Jackie uses the force again to pull May towards her so she can handcuff May. She manages to get one of the cuffs on and begins to read May her Star Wars Miranda rights. May almost pulls a reversal on Jackie, but Jackie recovers and continues to tell May why she's being arrested as she tries to get her other hand cuffed. Yeah, I got a better idea, Jackie. How about you shut the fuck up and maybe finish actually detaining her before you get too ahead of yourself there. May breaks free again and tries to pull out her shank, so she can try and stab Jackie a couple times but misses. She throws her knife at Jackie, but Jackie blocks it with a piece of random junk, which Jackie then pathetically throws at May, bringing this fight dangerously close to pathetic catfight territory. This is when Jackie should have just ignited her lightsaber. Instead, May throws another knife at the console next to Jackie. The sparks from the console leave Jackie vulnerable to a kick from May that sends Jackie through the thin wall of Kelnaka's home and back out into the forest. Elsewhere in the forest, Smilo Ren and Saul are simultaneously having their fight still. They come to a pause in their combat and Saul says,
You trained May. Show your face.
To which Smilo replies,
And let you read my thoughts. No, no, no.
Who is this, the ghost of Amy Winehouse?
I said no, no, no.
Saul then says,
What master hides his face from his pupil?
And Smilo says to Saul,
You tell me.
I think at first a lot of people heard this and took it more literally, and thought that Saul might be a secret Sith or a secret villain of some sort. But what Smilo Ren is alluding to is a little more nuanced than that. What he really means is since Saul still has never told his former Padawan Osha that he was the one that dealt a lethal strike to her mother, Saul has never allowed Osha to get to know the real him. And that the wise, pragmatic, and pacifistic man that Osha knows to be her master is a mask that he wears for her. A mask that has shaped her entire perception of him for as long as she has known him. I guess at some point May told Smilo that it was Saul who killed her mother. Smilo alluding to this in his retort seems to hit close to home with Saul, and they resume their fight. We briefly cut back to May and Jackie moving through the forest as the fight continues. And Jackie still hasn't tried using her lightsaber yet? Why the fuck is Jackie just letting May advance and close in on her while pathetically walking backwards? May engages Jackie with her shank, and manages to land a slice to Jackie's leg. Jackie screams out in pain. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the forest, Yord and Osha hear her scream in the distance. Osha stops to remind Yord of Jackie, and Yord says,
Jackie is a Jedi. She can take care of herself.
Well, Padawan, technically. We're also going to see that Yord is extraordinarily right on this. But remember how in Attack of the Clones, and even in Empire Strikes Back, it's made clear that training in and learning the ways of the Jedi doesn't actually make you a Jedi in of itself.
What is your suggestion, Master Jedi?
Oh, Anakin's not a Jedi yet. He's still a Padawan learner.
The Force is with you, young Skywalker. But you are not a Jedi yet.
It's funny to me how Disney Star Wars tends to treat being a Padawan and being a Jedi as one and the same. It's like saying May is already a Sith Lord just because she is training as an Acolyte or whatever. That's just not how it works. Yord then says,
I need to get you to safety. That thing is too dangerous.
True, you guys need to get the fuck out of there. The scene cuts back to Smilo and Saul fighting when Smilo sends Saul flying back with a kick, and Saul's lightsaber deactivating as he hits the ground. Saul reignites his lightsaber as he gets back up, but then he notices that Smilo is gone. We cut back again to Yord and Osha that are still standing around talking about Smilo for some reason. But then they continue towards the ship when Yord realizes he's lost Basil for like the 4th time since they've entered this forest. At this point, I'm convinced more time has been spent trying to find Basil than actually following Basil's tracking.
He's vanished again.
Basil! Come on, let's follow him.
Where's Basil?
What good is it for Yord to learn this hamster's language if he can't even stay close enough in proximity to communicate with it for more than 10 seconds at a time? Yord and Basil are like fucking Ron Weasley and Scabbers. It's embarrassing. We cut back again to May and Jackie's fight, where May almost gets the upper hand and comes close to cutting Jackie's throat. But Jackie headbutts May and takes her down to the ground, finally cuffing May's other hand and apprehending her. This fight should have been over before it even started. Instead of Jackie doing her stupid flying double kick, what she should have done is force push May to the ground and then advance on May with her lightsaber drawn. We see after the fight that Kelnaka's lightsaber was knocked out of May's hands and landed on the forest floor when Jackie kicked her. So presumably the same thing would have happened if Jackie force pushed May to the ground. Jackie would be able to force pull or pick up the lightsaber instead of having to pick herself up off the ground. May would immediately be at a huge disadvantage and would have to surrender. Jackie could practically toss the handcuffs to May and tell May to handcuff herself at that point. No matter how you slice it, this sequence of events should not be happening the way they are happening. But, of course, it gets worse. After Jackie finally cuffs May, Jackie seems to sense something approaching and she can finally remember she has a lightsaber she can reach for. We then see Smilo Ren doing a silent run towards Jackie. And he engages her in lightsaber combat. I guess he's here to prevent May from being captured and leaving the planet. That way May won't be able to give any leads to the Jedi. That, and I guess he would rather kill May himself than let the Jedi kill her in self-defense or something. But hey, in theory, Smilo should be able to make quick work of a Padawan like Jackie, right? I mean, we just got to see Smilo take on 5 Jedi Knights at once and kill almost all of them. How is Jackie going to stand a chance on her own? These are things we as the audience would logically ask ourselves considering what this episode has shown us. However, once again the plot is required to draw this out. And so instead we get the jarring display of a mere Padawan being able to hold their own against an unpredictable dark side user she has no training to prepare her for.
He doesn't follow the rules of combat. There's no method to his movements.
That just finished a killing spree of Jedi Knights.
It doesn't make sense.
Smilo Ren isn't toying with Jackie either. Smilo notices May escaping and somehow Jackie is actually giving Smilo a run for his credits in lightsaber combat while he desperately tries to defeat Jackie so he can go after May. Now to be fair, we'll see that Smilo is going to actually kill Jackie soon, but there's just no way this fight should be lasting as long as it is. I don't buy into that Padawan Jeki is more formidable in lightsaber combat than 5 Jedi Knights combined. Fuck off. Smilo destroys Kilnaka's saber that Jeki was using, leaving her with only her own. In the second it takes for Jeki to look down at the destroyed hilt and look back up, Smilo has disappeared again into the forest. Jeki throws what's left of Kilnaka's saber hilt to the ground and runs to presumably chase after Smilo Ren. The scene wipes back over to Osha and Yord making their way through the dark forest when they retrace their steps to the Umbermoth nest they passed through in the last episode. Having realized this, Osha tells Yord to turn off his saber because the light attracts them. To which Yord replies,
Attracts what?
"The fucking freaky ass Umbermoths, Yord. What do you mean attracts what? You were right there when Saul killed the one. Osha woke up and you all figured this out hours ago." I mean, really, guys, is Yord supposed to be this stupid, or does the show not trust its audience to remember what it established in the last episode?
It doesn't make sense.
And seeing the mark where an Umbermoth had been dormant, he realizes where he and Osha are now. Yord deactivates his lightsaber while he and Osha begin to hear the Umbermoths in the trees above them. Yord says,
"We go slowly."
And they continue through the nesting ground. Elsewhere, May is running through the forest while Smilo Ren is starting to catch up to her. We get this funny shot that feels like a Ray of Light parody. Smilo reaches May and tries to take her head off with his lightsaber, but luckily she ducks just in time. Why didn't Smilo just use the Force to grab her and pull her towards his lightsaber like we just saw him do earlier? May pleads with Smilo to forgive her and says she was weak. Smilo says,
"You've always been weak."
Even though Smilo has a clear shot to completely cleave May in half, he swings his lightsaber at her as she puts her hands up, and only her handcuffs get cut as she falls to the ground. Considering how Smilo was just trying to take May's head off just a moment ago, it doesn't seem like he's trying to free her. So this must be unintentional and therefore pretty fucking lucky, isn't it? Just as Smilo is about to deal a killing blow to May, Saul uses the Force to pull Smilo away from May, while Jeki takes a swing with her saber, but Smilo ducks as he's being pulled back. Jeki and Saul then both begin to fight Smilo 2-on-1. While Jeki and Saul are fighting Smilo Ren, Smilo notices May starting to run away again. He turns to chase after May, and oh, now he uses the Force to freeze her in place? Fuck off. Having Smilo do this now of all moments when he didn't do it to Osha, or Jeki, or May earlier just shows how arbitrary the use of the Force is written into the show.
It doesn't make sense.
Anyway, after Smilo freezes May and throws her against a rock with the Force, he tries to deal another killing strike, but it's blocked by Jeki, and she resumes to fight with Smilo along with Saul. We get what I actually think is an interesting shot of May watching the others fight as she sits helplessly with her back against the rock. I find it interesting because it shows how May is now forced to watch the Padawan that just fought and arrested her and the Jedi that killed her mother now fight to defend her own life. It shows May that even though she is a serial murderer, that the Jedi don't believe that murder should be her fate. This should absolutely challenge her view of the Jedi, and I wish we saw her talk about this with Osha later on. But as we will see, May is going to either forget all about this or never consider it to begin with.
The Jedi got what they deserved.
While in the Umbermoth nest, Osha hears the voice of young May calling out to her through the Force or their thread or whatever. Having noticed Osha has stopped following him, Yord says,
"Osha, what is it?"
And Osha says,
"We have to go back. He's gonna kill them. He's gonna kill them all."
Well, yeah, of course that's Smilo's goal, but realistically, I don't see how her and Yord change that by going back. Yord is injured, and Osha isn't even trained enough to fight at all, it seems, and would just be a liability for the Jedi in this fight. If anything, Yord and Osha going back helps Smilo ensure that he does kill all of them there. Osha shines her light from Pip's head into the trees above them, revealing the swarm of Umber Moths. Even though the show's about to tell us that the moths go straight for this exact same light when it's attached to Smilo, for some reason, they don't instantly swarm Osha when she is holding it, and instead the plot allows her to simply use the light as a beacon to get the Umber Moths to follow her and Yord back to where the others are fighting Smilo. Fuck off. The scene cuts back to the fight between Smilo versus Saul and Jeki, where the two seem to be gaining the upper hand for a moment. Saul throws Smilo off balance with a series of punches and counters, and sends Smilo off a small ledge. Jeki rushes in to fight Smilo when she manages to land a couple of blows to the front of his helmet with their lightsaber hilt. causing the helmet to split in two pieces and fall to the forest floor. We get a shot of Smilo pulling the hilt of his lightsaber to reveal a second Shoto-style lightsaber. As he ignites the short blade, Jeki charges and locks blades with Smilo's main saber, leaving her close and vulnerable enough for 3 rapid stabs through her torso from Smilo's Shoto saber. One might think a killing blow like this would be a little excessive, but after what we've seen other Disney Star Wars characters survive, it's necessary in order to tell the audience that, yeah, this character is indeed being killed off. Come to think of it though, a couple of those Jedi that only got slashed or stabbed once might still be alive back there. As the life in Jeki begins to fade and as she begins to fall to the ground, the shot reveals Chimere standing on the other side of the slain Padawan.
Oh my god!
Just kidding, pretty much everyone saw this coming once they could tell by the arms that it wasn't a woman, thus ruling out Mother Korra. The moment Jeki dies, the scene cuts back to Osha being stopped in her tracks and she lets out a gasp as she pauses for a moment. The fact that we're supposed to believe that 2 scenes in 2 episodes are enough for these two to form a serious connection enough to produce a force bond is insulting. In a moment of shock, Saul looks down at the dead Padawan and simply says,
Jeki.
To which Chimere says,
Was that its name?
well shit, I didn't expect Disney to create a villain character that basically says the hell with your
Fucking pronouns!
and calls a humanoid female sentient it, but that's kinda hilarious. Saul's shock turns to righteous anger as he says,
She was a child.
To which Smilo says,
You brought her here.
True. Not only true in of itself, but that's something a lot of us as the audience wanted him to say at the time. Also, I'm sorry, I know we're all having a serious moment here. You know, dead Padawan on the ground and all. But what was that again about Jeki?
She was a child.
And there we have it, folks. It's no longer just my suspicion or speculation, but by even evidence presented by the show's dialogue itself. 24-year-old Osha is a confirmed child groomer.
But I'm better company than a droid. And, way more flexible.
She was a child.
Don't tell me you'll miss me.
She was a child.
Next time I'm on Coruscant, though, I'll look you up. And we'll go to a cantina and trade stories about Master Soul.
She was a child.
Also, what does Smilo say later on to Osha about Jeki?
You killed Jeki!
Why do you love people who can only go so far?
She was a child.
So according to this show, Osha was falling in love with Jeki, who was a child. This show and everyone involved is fucking weird for that one, and I rest my fucking case.
Now that you've been identified, prison transport will take you back to Coruscant.
Anyway, Smilo looks over at May, still processing what she is seeing. Amusingly, he says,
Hello.
In his meek and meager alter ego voice. He then throws his cloak at Saul, momentarily distracting and blinding him. The fact that it works seems a little embarrassing for everyone involved. But while this happens, Smilo uses his other arm to force pull May by the throat into his grip, and mocks May for not knowing his true identity. Saul ignites his lightsaber and tries to strike at Smilo, but he blocks it with his lightsaber. Smilo says to Saul,
You attacked me while my back is turned? Not very Jedi of you.
Oh, he's got you there, Saul. Man, Smilo is bringing the receipts tonight. But also, careful what you're doing there, Smilo. About an inch lower and you'll be stabbing through your own arm as well as May's skull. Saul reluctantly deactivates his lightsaber and throws it on the ground and asks,
What are you?
To which Smilo says,
I have no name, but the Jedi like you might call me Sith.
Holy shit, where the fuck do we even begin to unpack this? I guess we'll start with the name, or lack thereof, really. The official name for this villain and so-called Sith is the Stranger. That's it? The Stranger is the best Disney can do? Also, I'm not sure if he's lying or not when he says he has no name, but if he doesn't have a Darth title, then this guy is not a Sith. And if he is willing to tell Saul he's a Sith and therefore reveal the Sith before his canonical time, then fuck it, might as well have him say, I am Darth Smilo and Jedi like you should call me Sith or something like that. But this guy's got nothing. Smilo Ren is probably just a Sith wannabe that got caught studying the dark side through forbidden text or holocrons while he was a Padawan and was forcibly banished from the Jedi Order by his master Vernestra. Plagueis probably shows up later because he senses a disturbance in the Force and wants to eliminate dark side outliers that are not descendant of the Darth Bane lineage. Darth Plagueis could be Smilo Ren's master, but it would be weird if Smilo was a Sith Lord that never received a Darth title from his master. I'm sure there are fans of the show that are probably going to cry and say, well, they were probably going to answer all that in season 2, but the show is cancelled now, so they can't. But this show already doesn't fit in where it wants to. And it has to damage and alter other characters and events at certain points in time in order to force itself into the canon. A season 2 would absolutely do more damage than make more sense of things because it would have to. Saul asks Smilo,
Why risk discovery?
And Smilo replies with,
Well, I did wear a mask.
Alright, that's pretty funny, I guess, to someone like me that's already not taking the show seriously more at this point. But to someone actually taking this show seriously and is actually on the edge of their seat from this, I imagine it would be somewhat of a tonal mismatch. I mean, a comedy beat at a time like this? Saul then asks Smilo what he wants and Smilo says freedom. Smilo then kicks May's leg in order to bring her to her knees. But judging by the sound of this, it sounds like Smilo is breaking May's leg so she can't run away again. Don't get me wrong, that's definitely a good idea for him to do that. But the plot needs May to move around and do stuff still, so even though her leg is obviously being broken here, we're just going to pretend like it's not in a few minutes, okay? Smilo continues and tells Saul he wants the freedom to wield his power the way he likes without having to answer to Jedi like Saul. And by the way he likes, he means getting Osha to bathe in the waters of Lake Minnetonka. But we'll get to that later. Smilo says,
I want a pupil. An acolyte.
He said it! He said it!
Wow, you actually went there on that one, huh? Alright, what else is there?
But this one went back on our deal.
At least threatening her here makes a little more sense, because if he ignites his saber, it will go through Osha's head but not his arm because of the Cortosis armband. Anyway, Smilo says,
She exposed me.
Wait, what the fuck are you talking about, Smilo? Yeah, sure, she betrayed you by betraying your company as Chimere, and betraying your training as Smilo Ren or the Stranger. But she didn't expose you. She never got the chance to. She didn't even know who you were until 5 seconds ago, and even if she did, you killed Kelnaka and attacked the other Jedi before May even had a chance to surrender to any of them and tell them what was going on. You weren't exposed until Jeki broke off your mask and your face was revealed.
So now I have to kill every single last one of you. I don't make the rules. The Jedi do. And the Jedi say I can't exist.
See? Even he knows the show is on the brink of breaking canon here. That's a meta line if I've ever heard one.
They see my face. They all die.
Do it. Fucking get on with it then. Smilo then says,
Look at you two. Right back where you started.
This isn't quite the same situation though. In fact, not even close really. At that moment, we see Smilo's mask lift off the ground and fly through the air into Yord's hand. Yord lunges at Smilo with the Cortosis mask in one hand and his lightsaber in the other. Yord swings his lightsaber, but it's blocked and deactivated by Smilo's Cortosis armband. Smilo swings his lightsaber, but it's blocked and deactivated by the part of Smilo's mask that Yord picked up. A pretty smart idea, to be fair. They lock arms in a momentary stalemate, and Yord takes a look at Smilo's face. Yord says,
You.
And Smilo says,
Surprise.
Smilo breaks out of the hold and grabs Yord by the neck, breaking his neck and killing him, then tossing his lifeless body to the forest floor. Oh shit. Oh shit. Oh fucking hell. Of course this was my favorite part of the whole show, using the superior acting skills of Amanda Stenberg. We get a drawn-out shot that conveys the sheer horror and shock her character must feel after seeing someone who has known her as a youngling get killed so brutally in front of her. Wait, just kidding, she kinda doesn't give a fuck, but oh look, May is getting away again. I guess her leg isn't broken or torn anymore. And even though Osha was a terrible shot with this stun blaster in episode 2, she must have been practicing off screen between episodes, because now she is able to shoot May from much farther away. Saul finally loses his cool and begins to fight Smilo hand to hand, exchanging several punches with him in a visceral brawl. Saul BTFOs Smilo and force pulls his own lightsaber back into his hand, igniting the blue blade as he approaches Smilo. Saul grabs the incapacitated Smilo off the ground and prepares to deal a killing blow to him, but Saul is stopped by Osha yelling his name and signaling for him to not kill Smilo. Look, I get it. Revenge and killing in anger is not the Jedi way, and this is Osha's way of reminding Saul of that perhaps. But this guy has already said that his absolute goal is to make sure none of them leave this forest alive.
So now I have to kill every single last one of you.
The whole point of this mission has been to find May, so that May can potentially lead Saul to her master.
May's objective is not solely her own. If she resists arrest, and Holden neutralizes her,
It won't come to that.
then her master will truly be lost to us.
And now her master is within Saul's grasp. Saul can end this nightmare and potentially future nightmares right here and now. Osha notices the Umbra Moths flying above them and calls Saul's attention to them. Saul then deactivates his lightsaber and says,
"The Jedi do not attack the unarmed."
And with that, the driving motivation for Saul and the stakes of the first 4 episodes of this show are gone. Smilo says,
Rules, rules, rules. If you never follow them, you never have to break them.
What? I'm pretty sure that's not how that works. Was that asinine logic supposed to sound badass or something? Smilo gets up and force pulls his lightsaber to his hand and approaches Saul. You see? Clearly this guy isn't going to stop. With a final,
I love you.
Osha stabs the flashlight head of her pip droid into Smilo Ren's back, causing a small swarm to descend on Smilo and attack him. Smilo manages to fight a couple off with his saber, but he is quickly overwhelmed and carried up into the trees, as his screams fade and the camera cuts away, implying the moths have taken Smilo away to eat him or something to that effect. As we'll see, this is just baiting Smilo's death, which I guess is good in a way because this would have been a really lame way to kill off a main villain at only halfway through the season. Also, I find it a little arbitrary that Osha was okay with Smilo getting killed by Umbra Moths but not by Saul. She felt bad about one of the moths getting killed by Saul. So is she going to feel bad now that she got more moths killed by Smilo by using them to attack him? Nope, we're just forgetting all that because it doesn't serve the plot anymore. Osha asks Saul what Smilo meant by what he said about her not trusting Saul, and asks Saul what he did. Saul tells Osha he will explain, but as that happens, we see Osha's stun blaster getting force pulled from her holster and flying across the forest to May's hand. May, catching Saul off guard, shoots him with the stun blaster as he turns around, knocking him unconscious. So if Saul is standing at an angle that prevents Osha from seeing May behind Saul, then Saul should also be blocking May's view of Osha, and May shouldn't be able to see Osha's holster. Also, as far as May can tell, her master is gone and likely dead. The Padawan Jeki that tried to fight and arrest her isn't here either. If May was going to turn herself into the Jedi in order to reunite with Osha, then this would probably be the time to do it. But as we'll see, this embarrassing show wants us as the audience to forget May even said that. As the sun rises, May and Osha are finally about to have their first in-person conversation with each other since the night of the fire on Bryndock 16 years ago. Now, instead of going back and forth telling you what each of these characters say to each other, I'm just going to let them talk and we'll stop them when there is a problem that needs to be addressed, because there's a lot that needs to be unpacked here. Sounds pretty straightforward, right? Okay, go.
What have you done? I did what I needed to do. For you. For our family.
Alright, stop. You assumed Osha was dead along with your family and you wanted revenge for that. That shit is for you, May, so you can cope with living on without them. You can say the murdering of Jedi is for them all you want, but it doesn't bring them back or benefit them in any way if they are dead.
Everything you've ever done has been for yourself. All of these lives lost tonight. Again, all because of you. The Jedi got what they deserved.
Stop! What the fuck do you mean, May? So was it just bullshit when you said you wanted to turn yourself into them? Hell, Jeki attacked you and tried to arrest you, but even she tried to defend your life from Smilo. Presumably, if you did turn yourself in to use them as protection from your master, would they still deserve to be killed by your master overnight? Because then you would be defenseless. Holy shit, you really are begging us to forget the last episode.
Those Jedi were more my family than you ever were.
Well, relatively speaking, sure, but let's not get carried away there, Osha.
Have you forgotten who we are? Where we come from?
Well, yeah, that was kind of what Osha wanted to do ever since you two were 8 years old. Osha didn't want to be a witch, and she wanted to leave you, your home, and the witch lifestyle behind to become a Jedi.
They invaded our home. Invaded? Hey, no.
That one is a little debatable. Sure, the Jedi's main mission on Brendok wasn't to make contact with and invade the home of the witch cult. According to the Jedi, they didn't even know the witches or anyone else for that matter were even on that planet. But the Jedi did slice into their home unannounced and uninvited when they first made contact. So, it's a little invasion-y.
You were the violent one. You started that fire. And I would have been dead too if it weren't for the Jedi. They've brainwashed you.
Not really. Osha just doesn't know the whole story yet, and she never became a Jedi because of it. You have been brainwashed twice over, May. By the witch cult and by Smilo. Fuck it, make that 3 times over since the writers seem to have brainwashed you between this episode and the last episode.
They've turned you against me. But it's okay, Osha. I can help you. I can help you return to yourself.
The fact that this fundamentally confused and incongruent character has the nerve to tell anyone they can help them return to themselves is fucking insane to me. May says she is able to do that, but what does that even mean to these characters? Hopefully, helping Osha doesn't involve walking or running through more of this forest, because if it does, May might just give up and betray Osha instead, since that's all it takes for her to flip her motivations. May then hugs Osha, tells her she loves her, and pleads with Osha to please choose her. Osha's awkward expression on her face is hilariously satisfying to see, because that's kinda how my face looks when I watch this scene. I understand that this warm fuzzy moment is a bit of a fake out, but everything about this scene feels uncomfortable and the tone feels out of place. These two were just talking about how people that Osha considered to be close to family were murdered overnight. What the hell is with this music and this glowing shot that makes it all seem like a happy ending? Considering how things have been going in this show up to this point, I honestly thought Osha and May were going to team up against a Jedi from here on out. But thank God, Osha is at least smart enough to not fall for this and tries to arrest May. Osha then says,
You're a criminal, May. You must pay for your crimes.
Correct!
May asks Osha what she is doing, and Osha tells May she is doing what she came here to do. To arrest May. I absolutely agree with Osha here, but it probably would have been a good idea for Osha to stall for time until Saul wakes up so he can help her arrest May. May pleads with Osha not to do this, and Osha tells May she did this to herself. Well, that and the Jedi she murdered, but yeah.
You followed a false master. So did you.
Osha never became a Jedi, and May gave up on her training that she never really followed anyway because her feet got sore. Sure, Osha was a Padawan for 10 years, but that didn't seem to stick at all because she can't even use the Force anymore. Neither of them followed a master much at all, it seems. May then pulls a reversal, and now Osha is the one being subdued. Can't quite tell how this even happened, really. The shot is zoomed in too much. It looks like May and Osha just switching places in a choreographed way rather than May actually getting the upper hand on Osha. Osha tells May to leave Saul out of this, and May says Saul stole Osha from May and her family. Why wouldn't May just tell Osha the more egregious fact and tell her that Saul killed their mother? Why doesn't Osha ask May what does May know that she doesn't know? And what has Smilo told her about Saul, if anything? Either of these would be of the most likely things to happen. So this whole exchange feels even more awkward now, because it makes it seem as if May is just assuming Osha knows the whole story of what happened 16 years ago, while also maintaining that Osha doesn't know because she is brainwashed to not know. Rewatching this show is a punishment for brain function. It requires you to pretend like you are watching it all for the first time all over again, or else it doesn't hold up. Osha tells May that Saul saved her life. May asks Osha,
And what kind of life is that, huh? A life without purpose? Without love? Without family?
May is still the one that took all of that from her, not Saul. May took away Osha's purpose by causing such severe trauma to Osha that she wasn't able to become a Jedi, something that was all she wanted to do as a child. May took away her love when she exchanged it for anger and hatred towards Osha for not lying to the Jedi. And May took away her family by causing a fire that destroyed their home with the intent to kill Osha. Osha breaks free, but then May does a force push, which knocks Osha out cold, somehow. We don't see her hit her head at all. She's wearing a backpack, so that would break her fall a little bit, and there's not even that much of a fall to break anyway. Osha falls off of a small ledge that's only like 3 feet high. This is like the opposite of plot armor. Standing over unconscious Osha, May says,
You never could block.
Get it? It's just like when they were kids. May then force pulls Yord's lightsaber into her hand, and oh my god, that looked really weird. Did they CGI her entirely to catch the lightsaber, or is it just her arm? And if none of this is CGI, then why is her movement so stiff and mannequin-like? She looks like she's in a video game and is about to start T-posing. May then crouches down and ignites the yellow lightsaber right below her face. I was hoping May had stopped seeing the point in her going on in her miserable and pathetically written existence and was about to off herself. But instead, we get the most cringy thing ever done with a lightsaber in Star Wars, since Jake Skywalker threw the Skywalker saber over the edge of a cliff.
Okay, I smell like burnt hair.
May's plan seems to be stealing her sister's identity and leaving her to her fate in the forest. May's forehead marking would still be visible at some point, but of course her hair will conveniently stay perfectly in place after all this, so it stays covered. Not far away, we see the head of Osha's pit droid, and dying Umbra moths falling to the ground. And finally, Smilo Ren descends to the ground, intact and seemingly unharmed by the moths. He continues back into the forest. Meanwhile, a short distance behind Smilo, we see Basil find the pit droid head. One would think Smilo would be able to hear Basil and instantly come over to murder him, but no, Smilo just fucks off and Basil picks up the pit droid head. I would have figured Basil to be back at the ship by now, or at least close to it, but the plot needs him to kind of walk around in circles in the forest until he could pick this up. Then he can go back to the ship. Saul begins to regain consciousness. Meanwhile, May approaches him with her new haircut and wearing Osha's clothes. Why did May even waste her time bothering with any of this? So she can what? Get close to Saul with his guard down? She knocked Osha unconscious. Saul was already unconscious, and she had access to a lightsaber. May should have just grabbed a lightsaber and went over to kill Saul while he was unconscious right after knocking out Osha. Does May not realize this is probably the best chance she is going to get revenge on the person that killed her mother? As Saul regains consciousness, he frantically asks Osha,
Where is she?
To which not Osha says,
Who?
Both me and Saul almost have a stroke, and Saul says,
Your sister.
Seriously, why write this dialogue this way? It's painful. Why not just have May walk up to Saul and say, Saul, are you okay? May got away. We need to get back to the ship. Or something like that. And I get that May and Osha are identical twins, but why is Saul even falling for this? Shouldn't he be able to sense that this isn't his former Padawan? May helps Saul up back on his feet. Saul then takes a moment to realize he is surrounded by the bodies of Yord and Jeki. It seems that Saul wants to despair on the moment, but knows that he can't right now. He knows he needs to keep moving. I actually appreciated the fact that a moment was taken for Saul to convey to us as the audience that this is serious shit that went down and realizes that too. Even if it was brief. Not Osha's reaction or lack thereof should have been pretty sus to Saul. Perhaps this expression of his is supposed to convey that. But instead of Saul being smart enough to figure it out himself, the show forces Basil back into the plot and Saul needs him to reveal that. It's insane to me how much these Jedi Masters and Knights depend on this classroom pet. There's more to be said about that later though. Saul and not Osha make their way back to the ship and Basil follows them on board as well. Basil, using his nose, seems to smell that something is off. Perhaps it's May's burnt hair.
Okay, I smell like burnt hair.
Or perhaps he's confused that he smells Osha's clothes on someone who isn't really Osha. But he should probably alert Saul right away that something isn't right, but this episode is almost out of runtime, so it's just a setup for now. The scene cuts back to Smilo returning to the spot where he killed Jeki and Yord so he can retrieve his mask. He then walks over to Osha, still unconscious on the ground. Smilo looks down and says,
What extraordinary beings we are.
Smilo kneels down next to Osha, and wait, what the fuck? Is he force healing her? How did she even get that scrape or gash or whatever the fuck it is anyway? I thought we were supposed to believe that Osha got knocked out off screen because she fell backwards when she got force pushed by May off of that small ledge, not from some laceration on her side. Did I miss something here? Smilo continues and says,
Even in the revelation of our triumph, you see the depth of our despair.
It sounds like some fucking commie gobbledygook.
I don't think anyone had any triumph here. All that's left is despair. What Smilo is saying just sounds like cope since he got BTFO'd by moths and wasn't able to kill May. I guess Smilo's plan is to take Osha with him now even though he tried to kill her earlier. Ah, I see what you're doing, show.
We call it the old switcheroo.
We absolutely do not call it the old switcheroo.
Smilo puts a blankie over Osha as if to tuck in the episode and the scene wipes out for the end credits. What the fuck is even going on in this show anymore? Episodes 1, 2, 4, and 5 are pretty much a straight shot. 2 picks up after 1, 4 picks up after 2, and 5 picks up after 4. But as was stated before, the stakes of these first few episodes are completely gone and this show has completely unraveled into something else. The most charitable explanation I can give is that this season is split into 2 acts, and this is just the end of the first one. Because the way I see it, after this episode, Osha starts warming up to Smilo Ran, which is supposed to set up her turn to the dark side in the finale. So she's no longer the protagonist. Her last act as a protagonist was trying to arrest May. And as for May, she's still an antagonist since she still tries to kill Saul and eventually leads him to his death, which is depressing as fuck to think about because Saul is now the main protagonist. It's his show now. Saul has to drive the rest of the plot forward. At this point, he's the most consistently written character, so my investment in the show is anchored by him now. Lee Jung-jae's excellent performances certainly adds a compelling layer to Saul as well. It's a shame that the terrible writing in the show does the character a huge disservice by doing things like teleporting him to a random part of the forest when he should have been fighting with Yord and the Glup Shittos. Is that me attacking the show, or am I defending it from itself? As we've seen, I've tried to praise multiple things in these episodes, but then I am immediately punished for it by embarrassing dialogue and plot contrivances. Perhaps Smilo did Kilnaka a favor by killing him off screen.
Congratulations on the show. I'm hearing very good things. So lovely headline from Forbes before I get. I can't remember what it said. It said some very positive words.
Oh, that's
in a line.
good. That's good.
They haven't let me watch it though, so
I don't read anything. My wife just gives me the weather report.
I was going to ask.